Welcome back to Added Time. Daniel Childs here. Hope you had a great weekend, even though Chelsea always do their best to make sure we don't have good weekends. So in today's show, as usual, Added Time, answering your questions that you did submit on X at SonOfChelsea and also through my YouTube community page, kind of across the socials now. So Instagram at SonOfChelseaYT is the place to go for there. TikTok at SonOfChelsea. Facebook SonOfChelsea pages is live as well. So make sure you're following us on social media so you get all of the content and hopefully providing content about Chelsea doing better in the upcoming weeks. I've got to be honest and transparent before we get into this show and answer your questions about Chelsea and not just specifically about yesterday's draw. Didn't watch the game live. I was actually doing something in the end that was undeniably more fun and more beneficial and gave me more substance, and that was going to the Harry Potter Studios, the Warner Brothers tour, which, you know, was filled with happiness. There was a sense of nostalgia. There was actually some value. I don't think watching Chelsea is giving you that at the moment, especially after yesterday's performance. So that's why I didn't upload a review. I tried to... You know, sometimes sometimes I have gone back and watched games and then uploaded a review after, but it just felt right with added time to maybe wait and discuss after I've watched the extended highlights and seeing how people reacted to the game and speaking to some people. So that's why there was no review on the channel. There will, of course, be a review of the Aston Villa game next Sunday, which I am going to at the Bridge. But let's get into your questions. Before we do, actually, if you want to support the show, really easy way to do it. Hit that like button. It helps more Chelsea fans find the content. Also hit that subscribe button. You can turn those notifications on so you don't miss any of the uploads I post on the channel regarding Chelsea, like Added Time, like The Rational Perspective, like my news shows, and more content coming up throughout this season. And if you do have some spare change lying around, I know it's a difficult time, we have set up a Buy Me a Coffee page. A little bit like Patreon, as I discussed last week, we're going to be setting up a membership tier with some pretty cool things, probably some merch coming soon. So please hit the like button if you're excited for that. Go down there, link in the description box below. Greatly appreciate it if you could lend some financial support to the show to make it bigger and better. And also on the podcast, if you are listening through Son of Chelsea, that way make sure to give us a positive rating review if you do enjoy the show, because it does help out as well. Let's get into your questions though. Nick Clark here asks, starting off with a pretty deep question: will it all be all right in the end? It will be all right in the end. It's what you classify as all right. I think there's got to be a sense of humility and just appreciation that Chelsea fans have been very, very privileged. And I feel that so much of the discourse now that I see, it comes across as very entitled, and it comes across as... You know, this is the thing. When I say entitled, when I criticize maybe some of the discourse, or I look at some of the way people discuss things and kind of go overboard, is like I'm sort of saying that you can't criticize the club. I criticize the club. I criticize performances. I criticize transfers. That's what we do on this channel, right? But at the same time, like I'm very appreciative of being a Chelsea supporter and being very lucky that I was born and kind of grew up watching Chelsea be very successful. And 99% of football fans maybe in the world don't get to experience that. So I try and be appreciative of that. We're going through a difficult patch at the moment. How long it's going to last for may get worse. Hopefully we'll get better. But it's not like the doomsday kind of consistent thing of this is the end of the world. It's an absolute crisis. And the way some of that is fueled, I just don't think it's very positive. So I think it will be all right in the end. Don't expect a Champions League this season. That obviously can't happen. Maybe not even Champions League football, but obviously it's about supporting the team, and hopefully they can turn it around soon. Owen Williams asks, will Poch last the season when it's obvious he had no part to play in those transfers, especially when you see today he didn't bring on the Brazilian striker? I assume you're referring, of course, to David Washington, who was signed over the summer. I don't think this in itself, like him not being involved in transfers, like as in the key decision maker in transfers, I don't think that's like the most negative thing, because we've had discussions about this in recent years, that actually the kind of the way we've kind of bent to the will of certain coaches actually hasn't helped Chelsea's squad building. We may be doing that in a different way. I don't think it's the worst thing when you've employed sporting directors, when you supposedly have some sort of project and where you're going about things, to actually lend more of your weight to those people who are going to be in those positions likely longer than the head coach. That's just the reality of the game. So I don't think that in itself is linked together. If you're just asking me, will Poch last the season? I don't know that. I don't, I think I am very cynical now of buying into this idea that there's going to be a coach who's going to last 5 to 6 years. Even 2 to 3 years at Chelsea feels a little bit farcical, because we know how this club operates. And if Poch continues to underperform, and even if some people's frustrations do go to the board, like I don't, we know what happens at Chelsea. And given that in the first year of the new ownership, we had 3 different head coaches during one season, you can't really have much faith they're going to stick by someone. But I wait to be proven wrong. At Lewandell asks, is patience the only solution to our attack? Yes, absolutely, because you have a group of new attackers. Basically, in many areas, we have a group of new players who have to get used to each other. But as we know at Chelsea, that doesn't really happen, and people aren't really that willing to be patient about the club, and that's just the reality. I do think that, unfortunately, that just is the reality. Like, to expect young players, and even whatever group of players you have, unless they are like Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, Kylian Mbappe, whoever it is, like freakishly good players, Erling Haaland, 9 times out of 10, you've got to give young players a chance to develop and chance to grow those relationships. I don't think it's that much of a surprise that, for instance, I think the best combinations we've seen, say, with Raheem Sterling and Nicholas Jackson, is because Raheem Sterling's a very experienced player, whilst some others are still trying to figure out their own game. But it's also about consistency, hopefully. I thought that Mudryk had a pretty good game against Bournemouth from what I saw. And I think he needed to perform because, of course, everyone was shouting and screaming about him starting. He then gets to start. He obviously needs to perform. And we spoke about him in one of the shows last week about what was going on around him. I think personally he could come away from that game feeling a little bit more confident because he created some of Chelsea's best chances. And I actually thought the way him and Jackson linked up reminded me a little bit of what we saw during pre-season that excited us. So it's going to take time, but is there that time at Chelsea? I think that's always the big sort of deal breaker. And the idea that Chelsea, again, are looking to spend more money in the January transfer window, I don't know if that's going to solve things. I really don't. I know that some people just consistently scream like we need more either signings or just like experience, but my concern is the clutter that arguably is already there, that's going to grow with all these players coming in. Like, how does that disrupt the rhythm if you're going to build that chemistry over a longer period of time? I look at, say, Arsenal as a comparison. Bukayo Saka getting to play week in and week out and getting to grow as a player, gain that confidence and be trusted and work around players. And I think it's the same for, Gabriel Martinelli on the other side of Arsenal's attack, who sure has also taken quite a few years to get good. You need to give the time for those players to marinate and to form those connections, which I think was one of the more positive things I felt in Frank's first season. Was you saw Abraham, Mount combining pretty regularly. Christian Pulisic too, when he was fit for a long period of time. I'd like to think we can see something like that under Mauricio Pochettino, but are people actually going to be willing to give that time? I'm not sure. Miles Terry asked quite a few questions here. Why didn't we sign a proven striker and take a gamble on Jackson? How did we spend £1 billion and we still don't have a spine? Why was Angelo loaned after failing with the Michael Elise bid? And finally, what is the realistic aim for us to finish this season? Why don't we sign a proven striker? Again, this is something that has come up, and again, I will pose the question back to you that we have signed proven strikers in recent years and they haven't worked out. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is the most recent example. Romelu Lukaku is another example. Do we have to go through the history of strikers that haven't worked out at Chelsea? I'd say the best striker we have had, the one who has provided the most value, I think you guys, if you've watched my stuff for a long period of time, you know where this is going, wasn't an experienced striker. It was Tammy Abraham. if we're talking like pound for pound value, someone who exceeded expectation, or at least, offered a level of goals that was all right, and got closest to Diego's first season in 14-15 in terms of Premier League goals, that was Tammy Abraham in the 1920 season. Now, it's all right just saying go out and find a proven goal scorer. Arguably, we did. The problem is that guy got injured right at the start of this, not even before the season started, Christopher Nkunku. And, a guy who's maybe not going to play as a centre forward, but could provide goals. How do we spend $1 billion and still don't have a spine? The amount of injuries, I think, people have got to understand the sheer number of injuries we have at the moment. That isn't to say the team yesterday couldn't have done better. That isn't to say it was okay losing to Nottingham Forest at home. But just looking at, I made a graphic earlier for my socials of just looking through the team who aren't available at the moment. Moises Caicedo, of course, big signing for us in central midfield. We want him to partner up with Enzo Fernandez. He wasn't available. I already spoke about Christopher Nkunku being a key player, and Pochettino said it as much. This is a key guy within my attack, and we had to scrap those plans when he got injured and make another plan. Connie Chukwuemeka, another player injured, who was a key plan of Pochettino's second attacking approach to Chelsea. He gets injured at West Ham. They have to scrap up a plan and go to a plan 3, basically. All of those injuries, when we think about those players, these are not small players. Reece James, massive player potentially for Chelsea if he remains fit. Benoit Badiashile, Wesley Fofana. We already said Christopher Nkunku. We are talking about, I'd even say, of course, Noni Madueke. We think some of these players, of course, who were not there yesterday, we assume will be back pretty soon. These are not like long-term injuries. But when you put all of those absentees together, I mean, it does make potentially a spine. And that makes a huge difference. And I know people just scream excuses and say we spent $1 billion. But like, you can spend $1 billion, but if you've got like 12 injuries, what are you? And if all those 12 injuries are to key players, no club I think can get around that, unfortunately. And Angelo, I mean, I think this is another guy who probably needs time to grow and develop. Why didn't we keep Cesare Casadei? Why didn't we keep Andre Santos? To me, that's not like a be all and end all. I think he needs time to grow. And, would he be any better off than the other young attackers we have at the moment? Just because he's had some decent performances at Strasbourg, does that mean he's ready to play for Chelsea? Does that mean he's going to thrive in the environment that Chelsea is at the moment? I'm unsure on that. The realistic aim to finish this season, on your final question there, is I still think it is European competition. I think it is 4th to 6th. I think I would be, and I know a lot of people right now are saying relegation, the world's going to end. I still think this side can get a lot better, and I think that those injured players returning will make a big difference to what Pochettino can do, and I do have faith that Pochettino is a very good coach, but I still think some form of European football for me is clear. So I'd say, yeah, obviously I think anything below 10th is tragic again. Even below 8th, I think would be a real disappointment. I think you've got to be getting into some form of European competition to see it, at the very least, in comparison to last season, as some form of improvement. The final question here from Ivano is about injuries, obviously. Can an investigation be conducted on our medical staff? We've been dealing with injuries for years now and nothing has been done. What will it take for the owners or anyone to investigate? I think this is a difficult question to answer, and I thought about it because, as not being a medical expert myself, how much of it is down to fortune? How much of it is down to players' bodies adapting to certain training regimes? Is it a young player maybe getting through a difficult period of injuries in their career? To blame it all on the medical stuff, I think, is just a little bit simplistic. I really do. There is a reality that certain events have meant that maybe has only sort of hurt the issue, in the sense of Todd Bowley, of course, last year, that the new ownership sacking a lot of the previous medical staff and bringing some of them back. And how did that disrupt the sort of the environment around Chelsea? Did that disrupt certain things? Is it the fact that Chelsea are under a very intense head coach and some of these players are adapting to that new style of a training regime? I've heard that suggested. That may be true over a long period of time. These injuries may stop. You can't rule out, just bad luck in terms of players either having pre-existing injury problems or just collision injuries on the pitch that it's very difficult to avoid because they can just happen in the competitive game, right? In a competitive environment. So in terms of being, really dramatic in an investigation, that we have to go and find the culprit of this, I think is just silly. But there is clearly, the club would be concerned, because it's not just from a selection point of view. A lot of these players Chelsea have invested a lot of money into. There is also a side part of this, or maybe not a side part, it's a key part of this, but the demand on footballers has gone up so much in recent years, and it's not to say, I know some people were pointing out, well, not every club gets these injuries as much as Chelsea. Granted, that's true. There is also the intensity of this game rises, so there's a lot of variables. I just hope it can be resolved for the sake of Pochettino, for the sake of watching the team and seeing some great players and hopefully them develop and not stall consistently with injury problems. So that's my thoughts on, I think, what is a deeper and complex issue for Chelsea to solve in the coming months and years. But that is it for today's edition of Added Time. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. You can follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea. I said Twitter there, X. You can follow me over there. You can follow me on all the socials. Link in the description box below. Please hit that subscribe button. Please hit the like button too if you're enjoying the content. It really does help the channel out. And I will see you again very soon. All the best.